Well, first up, we try to understand from this set of group of scientists which are doing this projection called the Sutra Model of projection, on what exactly were the factors on which they have based this projection, right? So we looked at them, and these are some of the key things. It is, of course, based on the R factor, or the reproductive rate of the virus. It depends on the vaccine numbers, the possible reinfections, and the new variants coming in as well. Now, remember, what these people have done is they have made a formula that will make a projection for not just a third wave, for any further wave to come, really. And these things that I just mentioned is what that formula is actually based on. This has been broadly based on this projection, but to make you understand simply, let's try and decode why does a wave actually come. Now, that's due to either a faster spreading mutant or people not following COVID appropriate protocols at all. If both happens together, that's what happened in the second wave, remember, then the intensity of a wave is much more, right? So we understand that new variants, COVID appropriate behavior is key to the onset of a wave. The third crucial thing that can save you and I from a third wave, a possible reinfection and mostly death, is, of course, vaccines. And how good or bad are India's vaccination numbers looking like? Let's decode that as well. Now, what is the India vaccination equation at the moment? Now, to vaccinate all adults by the end of the year, which is the deadline set by the government, we are required to vaccinate at least 8.6 million people every day. So what we've done is we've got a 7-day average for you, and that comes down to about 4 million each day. That means there is a deficit over there. Last date where we have absolute numbers here is on 4th of July, which had 1.5 million vaccination. A caveat over here is that 4th of July was actually Sunday, and numbers usually slip that day. But this also means that we really need to make up for that shortfall during the week as well that follows. At the moment, the shortfall not looking very impressive at 4.6 million a day. And this shortfall is what we need to meet if we want to defeat and avoid a third wave. And if you're still not convinced about the role of vaccine, sample this. Lesser vaccines will mean higher caseload. Lesser vaccines will also mean more hospitalization in the future waves, and lesser vaccines will also mean more deaths in the future waves. In addition, according to the Sutra model that we're discussing today for COVID-19, the first dose, they say, reduces the infection approximately by 25 to 30%. Now, remember, this has been taken across the vaccines available with different efficacies, etc., and they've taken a broad estimate of how much of infection will they stop. 2 doses will reduce the risk of infection approximately by 50 to 60%. Now, this is sort of an average, like I said, of the various vaccine efficacies that have been factored in. But talking about the Sutra model, question is, there are several projections out there. Why is this one credible? Fair question. Now, to test that, we actually went back in time to see the same model produce results for the first and the second wave. So, sample this. This is, you see 2 lines over here. Now, the yellow line that you see marked over here is the model and the wave that was computed following the Sutra model. And what you see as a blue line, almost overlapping at most places, that is the actual data. That tells you that this model actually worked. You see almost an overlap over there in the first wave. What about the second wave? So many people did not anticipate it at all. The same Sutra model looked at the second wave as well, and again you see they have a couple of projections. They have lower bound, upper bound projections. They also had to anticipate a couple of things, but they mostly, this one again you see having an overlap over here. So they got the second model also right. Now that brings me to everybody asking, so what are they projecting then for the upcoming wave as well? Well, let's get to the climax straight away. Let's talk about dates first on what is being projected in this model. Now, the third wave, according to the Sutra model, could hit the peak between November and October. So this is around Diwali time that we're looking at a possible getting in or a peak of the third wave. Next, the intensity, they looked at that as well, and that they say the third wave, according to this model, will see half the daily cases recorded during the second surge. Having said that, the model actually makes 3 scenarios for the third wave, talking about the different intensities of wave that will actually come in. There is an optimistic model or a scenario, there is an intermediate scenario and a pessimistic scenario as well, because remember, it all really depends on the vaccination numbers and human behavior as well, which is so hard to actually put down in terms of absolute numbers. So let's look first at the optimistic scenario. I'll take you to the graph in just a bit. Now, life goes back to normal, and by August, there are no new mutants as well. In that scenario, the daily cases could be in the range of 50,000 to a lakh. Okay, so no new mutants, and we still continue to unlock at the pace we are unlocking. And there, the best case scenario really is that we'll have between 50,000 to 1 lakh cases a day. In the intermediate scenario, vaccination is 20% less effective with the onset of new mutants perhaps, and means cases could be in the range of 50,000 to a lakh again. Now, in the third scenario, this is an extremely pessimistic scenario that they have picked up, a new 25% more infectious mutant spreads, leading to a third wave that could be as high as 1,50,000 and 2 lakh cases every day. Now, this is significant, of course, because you're thinking this is even the worst case scenario. According to this model, let me just remind you again, remains to be much below what we saw in the second wave. All right, but also significantly higher compared to the first one. That brings me to this graph that they have set out. Look at this over here. We, of course, don't have the absolute numbers at this point, but this is what the Sutra model talks about as the worst case scenario, the most pessimistic scenario right now, and that also is half of what we saw as the peak of the first wave. You also see the timing over there falling right around Diwali. That's another worry that we have to look at.